in the remote and mist-covered hills of the Welsh countryside, where the ancient stone walls seem to remember every prayer and every curse ever spoken, there exists a well that the local people refuse to speak about openly. They call it the Whispering Well, but only in hushed voices, late at night when the fire has died down and the wind moves through the trees like cold breath against the ear. David Harlan was an English academic, a serious folklorist who had spent more than 15 years traveling across Britain collecting stories of curses, hauntings, forgotten saints, and unexplained disappearances. He arrived in the small, quiet village of Llanfillin in late October with his notebook, his camera, his recording equipment, and the kind of calm confidence that comes from believing that every strange tale can, eventually, be explained through research and reason. The villagers were polite, but noticeably distant. They answered his questions with short sentences and quickly changed the subject whenever he mentioned old legends or sacred sites. But after several evenings spent in the small pub and several glasses of strong, dark beer, one old farmer finally looked at him with tired eyes and spoke the truth in a low voice. "There is a well up on the old moor. It has been there longer than the church, longer than the village itself. People used to go there to pray for the sick and the dying. Then something changed many centuries ago. Now those who go there do not come back the same. Some do not come back at all. Leave it alone, Englishmen. Some things were never meant to be put in books or studied by outsiders." David smiled politely. He had heard similar warnings many times before in his career. The next morning, under a heavy gray sky that promised rain, he hiked alone up the overgrown path onto the moor. The air grew noticeably colder the higher he climbed. The silence was deep and unnatural. When he finally reached the well, it was smaller than he had imagined, just a circle of ancient moss-covered stones with a warped wooden cover. A faint but unmistakable smell of wet stone and metal rose from the darkness below. He removed the heavy wooden cover with some effort. The inside of the well was pitch black, far deeper than the physical dimensions should have allowed. He shone his powerful flashlight down, but the beam seemed to weaken and disappear after only a few meters, swallowed completely by the darkness. Then he heard it for the first time. A whisper, soft, almost tender, and intimately close. It spoke his name in a voice he had not heard since he was a child, the exact voice of his mother who had died when he was 9 years old. "David?" He told himself it was only the wind playing tricks. He recorded the sound anyway on his digital recorder. That night, back in the small rented cottage, he listened to the recording again in the dark. The whisper was much clearer on the tape. It spoke his name twice, slowly and lovingly, then added several words in Old Welsh that he could not understand. The next day, he played the recording for the old farmer. The man's face turned pale and he refused to listen to the end. "You should never have opened it. Now it knows your name. Now it knows you." The dreams began that same night, and they were unlike any dreams David had ever experienced. He stood at the edge of the well in total darkness. A woman dressed in a long white garment, her face completely hidden by long wet hair, rose slowly from the black water. She did not speak. She simply stretched out one pale hand toward him. When he woke up suddenly, his own right hand was stretched out toward the ceiling of the room, ice cold and dripping with water that was not there a moment before. He tried to leave the village the following morning. He packed his bags quickly and drove to the car. The engine would not start no matter what he tried. The local mechanic found nothing mechanically wrong with the vehicle. He only looked at David with quiet pity and said, "Sometimes the moor does not want people to leave once they have disturbed certain places." Driven by a growing mixture of fear and irresistible academic fascination, David returned to the well the next afternoon. The whisper was stronger this time. It spoke not only his name but also private details from his life. Small regrets, hidden guilts, moments of cowardice and betrayal that he had never shared with anyone. It knew him intimately, and it offered something in return. Stay with me. I can take away the guilt. I can make you whole again. All you need to do is drink from me. He should have walked away. Instead, trembling, he lowered the old metal bucket that still hung from the rusted chain and brought up a small amount of water. It was ice cold and perfectly clear. He drank one single sip. That night, the dreams became full visions that felt more real than waking life. He saw the true history of the well. Centuries earlier, a young woman named Katrin had been accused of witchcraft after her husband and 3 children died suddenly of a mysterious fever. The villagers, terrified and grieving, had dragged her to the well in the middle of the night and thrown her in alive. She did not drown quickly. She survived for several days, clinging to the slippery stones, whispering prayers, curses, and pleas for mercy until her voice merged completely with the water and the stone itself. The well had been feeding on her sorrow, her rage, her faith, and her pain ever since. Every person who came seeking healing or answers left a piece of their soul behind. The entity inside had grown stronger with every offering across the centuries. David woke up screaming, his mouth filled with the taste of iron and wet moss. When he looked in the mirror, his own eyes seemed slightly different, darker, older, as if something else was quietly observing the world through them. He tried to warn others. He tried to write the full story, but every time he sat down at his computer, the words that appeared on the screen were not his own. They became prayers and incantations in an ancient form of Welsh. His hands moved without his conscious control. The whisper was no longer confined to the well. It followed him everywhere. It spoke inside his head while he walked through the village streets. It spoke while he tried to eat. It spoke while he lay in bed, unable to sleep. You belong to me now. You opened the door. You drank from me. There is no leaving this place. On the 7th night, under a cold, full moon, David walked back to the well one final time. The villagers saw him pass, but said nothing. They had seen this before. He removed the wooden cover with hands that no longer felt the cold. The whispers surrounded him completely, inside his skull, inside his chest, inside his blood. He climbed onto the stone rim of the well. The woman with the long, wet hair was waiting below, arms open. Her face was finally visible. It was not monstrous. It was calm. It was the face of complete release from guilt, from memory, from the burden of being oneself. David leaned forward slowly. The last sound heard that night was a single long splash that echoed across the moor, followed by a perfect and eternal silence. They never recovered his body. The well was covered again with heavy stones. The villagers added more rocks on top. But on certain quiet nights, when the mist is especially thick, those who pass near the moor still hear 2 voices whispering together, one male, one female, speaking names that have not yet been spoken aloud. And if you listen long enough, with an open and troubled heart, it may one day speak your name too. So the story ends for now. Thank you for listening. May these whispers never find you in the dark. Until the next tale.